Hey everyone, this is Randy Kim from the Banh Mi Chronicles podcast, and it gives me a great pleasure to bring a person who I have respected in the past as a former podcaster, and he and his partner Jerry Lim were the co-host of the Politically Asian podcast, which had sunsetted a few years ago, which still makes me sad because I really do love that podcast and I have been such a fan of your work, and I know that you have been very involved in community activism and training folks about what it means to be an activist, to be involved, to have hard conversations with people within our Asian communities or any communities for that matter that on issues that really are very critical right now, especially in the Trump administration. You're also a comedian, from my understanding, too. And first of all, I want to say, how have you been holding up this year with 2025 going into 2026? And how has that navigation been in the work that you're doing? And I also want to name that you're also based in New York.
Totally, yeah. And Randy, thank you for having me. Great to actually talk with you in real life. Uh, right now, I think I'm holding up okay. Like I focus a lot of my energies on local energy within Crown Heights, which is a neighborhood within Brooklyn, New York. So I think on a day to day, I feel pretty satisfied because of the number of neighbors I know in my building and also the number of people who I know within like a 10 block radius of me, which had never happened before in my like 8 years of living in New York City. It's been very rewarding, I guess, against the backdrop of,
Mhm.
ICE or, Palestine marches, whatever you have it. I've never had such a strong network of relationships locally, so I feel pretty good.
Yeah, I also want to tell the viewers that the timestamp is October 9th, 3:09 p.m. U.S. Central Standard Time. So I just want to bring this up for context too. So, given what has happened this year, especially what has happened with Palestine and now with the ICE raids that are happening, what does being both Asian American and an activist look like in this climate?
Mm,
At least for you in this manner.
yeah. I'm not sure how much of an impact it has had, like race specific in this context. I haven't done as much anti-ICE activity. I mainly do like as like local neighborhood organizing. Been to a few pro-Palestine marches, including one in Crown Heights, actually a big one, which was there's a very big landlord called Pinnacle within Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and they own a giant portfolio of buildings. And recently they've been just like neglecting the tenants on a very severe level. But the tenants recently found out that Pinnacle actually supplies a lot of funding to Israel.
Mm,
So it's like, wow, they're taking all their money from their tenants and directly giving it to Israel while also not like the tenants, they have like so many rats, so many cockroaches, no heat, no
mm,
electricity. So there was like a rally that tied the two issues together.
mm.
But to bring it back to your question, yeah, I haven't really I guess felt any sort of racial awkwardness or like isolation around it. Like there are Asian people in the Crown Heights neighborhood and who I know, but I guess I don't primarily lean on that as much as I did maybe a few years ago.
Mm. And you were also originally from Arkansas as well, as if I remember correctly, right?
Totally, yeah. I grew up in
Yes.
Little Rock, Arkansas. Asian population like 2%, 2%,
Hmm.
3%, so pretty small.
Yeah. So how did like living in Arkansas inform your own community activism work and your own and the work that you do, um, and in your relationship with your own community and in as far as the Asian American experience goes?
Totally. Um, I mean, in general, big picture wise, in high school, K through 12 in general, I was not, I would say, an organizer by any means. I was pretty apolitical, very
Hmm.
typical, like hyper academic student. I took like 22 AP classes in high school, just
Wow.
like very like, head in the ground, Ivy League, gunning for the Ivy League, orchestra, science, math, whatever you can think of,
Wow.
you name it. I think the one tiny different thing I did was like there was this oral history project I did in high school that really focused on people's experiences with racism, homophobia, sexism. because the high school I went to was famous or infamous for its racism. Little Rock Central High School that like was an all-white high school, and they had to have 9 black students um, brought into the school with the National Guard.
Mm-hmm.
So th that was my only true experience with anything related to um, I guess the oppression that we talk about today. Aside from that, even though Little Rock, Arkansas was only 2 or 3% Asian, at least for Chinese people, there are a lot of ways to find each other. There was like Chinese school, there's orchestra, there's math, there's science. There's just ways of finding other people. So I actually never really had the experience that many Asians have of like being the only Asian person in an all-white class. Like maybe some classes, but there were enough classes and activities where there are other Asian people.
Mm. And what led you to living in New York City, and which is a huge cultural shift from Arkansas, little town, to the big city where the diversity is very much in abundance. Like what led you to New York City?
Yeah, I originally moved here for the comedy, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
very big on um originally really big on improv. I took so many improv classes and I was doing so many stand-up open mics. Um I was originally debating between New York City, Chicago, and LA actually
Mm,
because of the comedy scene. But at the time, my dad, he had a temporary job in upstate New York. So that's the only reason why I ended up in New York City because I first moved in with him for a few weeks and then slowly kept going back and forth between upstate New York and New York City to check out apartments and then finally found
mm.
one and moved down.
Wow. And being a
Oh,
comedian,
so
oh,
sorry about that. I think it's
oh
you.
yeah. Yeah, and being a comedian, oh, sorry. I wonder about what it means to be a comedian, especially as someone who's Asian American. And given that I don't know what year you entered into it, but there was a dearth of Asian Americans in that scene. And what did you learn from that experience? And how did it, in a way, um, cross into the political community level work that you were doing or that you're doing now?
Yeah, I would say in New York City at least there's a fair amount of Asian American comedians. We're talking like East Asian, Southeast Asian, South Asian. But one learning experience is the topics, right? Like, I feel like going to an open mic, at least in New York City back then, and I went 2 months ago to see a friend, so I guess even now, it kind of feels like you're just taking like you're doing time travel to the past, where it's like you might still hear jokes about like Asian people not being able to drive. Sometimes Asian people eating dogs, not as much. Um, maybe some like World War II Japan dropping a bomb type of jokes. It's such a time travel. And it's like when you escape from the open mic scene and you're just on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, you don't hear any of that, right? We're talking K-pop now, K-pop Demon
Mhm.
Hunters, whatever. It's just such a I can't phrase it anywhere else except for like a time travel, like the material and the mindsets. So that took some time getting used to. I guess part of the reason why I started doing open mics in 2018, but I stopped around 2023, is partially trying to deal with that huge disconnect between the very contemporary politics and the sort of old-timey, mind mentality in stand up. I'm not exactly sure what the
Mhm.
best way is to bridge comedy and politics right now. A lot of people do talk shows, right? That's one very
Mhm.
contemporary way. But it was so hard to be like talking about, during when I was doing Politically Asian, very contemporary news, very fresh jokes of all kinds, like Asian, not Asian, whatever. And then
Mhm.
to go back to an open mic where it's like, so Asian people can't drive, right? It's so weird to go back and forth between those two.
Yeah.
That is part of the reason why I stopped doing stand-up comedy and just kind of lean more into the politics.
Do you often feel that, like from your experience as a past comedian, what Asian Americans, do you feel like they are afraid to venture out into the politics or going out to the more meaty stuff? Because I think what really has annoyed me in the past, I used to have my grievances with large Asian American comedians. Don't feel like naming names here, but like I feel that sometimes I see them going into a more surface level, more acceptable, palatable way of telling their comedy without like really offending white people enough. Um, I'm pretty sure that it's got to feel really challenging to be in that atmosphere. But I wondered, is this something that you feel has happened a lot in that community of comedians?
I think there's a general theme of many comedians avoiding politics, but not just Asians. So like this is I think in how I approach things is always like, is this something that needs to be racialized or does not need to be racialized? And it's like,
Hmm.
of course, I can think of many Asian comedians who don't do politics, but I can also think of many white people who don't do politics or
Hmm.
even black people.
Hmm.
And what I've been telling people recently actually is for the longest time, been this aversion to politics from comedians, but now it seems unavoidable. Like
Hmm.
politics seems unavoidable. I don't know if you heard about the Rida Comedy Festival. Did you see that?
I'm trying to remember.
Oh,
Haven't heard. I don't think I've heard the full story on that.
it's a big festival that happened maybe 2 weeks ago in
Mhm.
Saudi Arabia. And
Oh,
a lot
okay.
of famous comedians like Dave
Yes.
Chappelle, Bill Burr, whatever,
Hmm.
were invited,
Hmm.
and they were getting absolutely smoked for taking so much money to perform there,
Mm.
directly for like the Crown Prince, who has we're talking like journalist assassinations,
Hmm.
huge suppression, and they're all like, I don't care, I'm just doing it for the paycheck. But a lot of comedians are now actually mad at that, which I don't think would have happened a few years ago. So there's some kind of political conscious shift happening
Hmm.
slowly in stand-up comedy that's not Asian specific.
Hmm.
But I think it's like just starting now, like just with, a lot of stand-up comedians feeling really bad about what Trump is doing now, and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I didn't support this.
Hmm.
Blah blah blah. I have more nuance now." They're just now reaping what they sow, and just now having to think about, taking a stand on things.
Yeah, I think it's also very interesting because I have been thinking about celebrity culture and how celebrity culture is perhaps dying. I don't know if it still is. I mean, there's still a huge component that's still there. I mean, we're seeing Taylor Swift, obviously, and Beyonce, and I think about what blowback they're dealing with because they are billionaires. They are very wealthy, very privileged, and Beyonce and Jay-Z were out having dinner with the Kushners, and Taylor Swift is Taylor Swift. I know the Swifties are gonna come after me. I do not give a damn, but that's a whole nother subject. So like, I kind of wonder like, is that paradigm really shifting? Especially like what has happened with Gaza. I've seen more of a gradual shift from like celebrities with big platforms starting to speak out, and there's plenty of others that still remain silent. I don't know. I'm just kind of like throwing that out there because I don't know if this is a if I'm making this up or but do you think that we're finally seeing that paradigm shift happen, especially at the most critical time?
To be honest, I'm not sure. Like
Mm.
when you mentioned that, what fills my head is all those letters of celebrities, promising to actually boycott Israel or not participate in any Israeli films. Like there are so many positive signals. And I think as of this recording recently, there was the news about an actual ceasefire, right? Like Trump had brokered some 20-point deal between Israel and Hamas to do something. Um, I don't know. The short answer is I don't know. I can name many celebrities now
Hmm.
who are very pro-Palestine. I can
Hmm.
name many who are
Right.
Zionist. Many are comedians, but I don't know if there's enough to do some overall shift within like entertainment.
Analysis,
I have
yeah.
no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when so like currently like when you got involved with community organizing, what can you say has been very important to bring folks who have never done community organizing? What ways do you communicate that? Because I do think that there are folks that feel like this is not really my wheelhouse. This is something that I'm not familiar with. I feel like I'm not aware enough of that I should be in the space. What did it take for you to get involved with that work, but also how do you bring people to the table?
Totally, yeah. And I'm not sure how much background's going into this, but as a brief background, I started organizing around 2021 when there were a lot of attacks on Asian people in New York City. I think that's when I felt the pull of like, I'm Asian, I should be doing something. One of the few cases when it was very racialized, and I'm like, I think I want to be doing something. So I got really involved within a lot of organizing around anti-displacement in Chinatown. So
Mhm.
that was like 2021 to around 2020, end of 2024. Um, and then now, especially towards the end of 2024 till now, which is like almost the end of 2025, it's really been about very hyper local organizing within Crown Heights. So that's the background. And at some point towards the end of 2024 is when I started making videos just kind of summarizing experiences that I saw not only from myself, but from other organizing groups, just from friends who are in other groups. It's all just like people sharing their experiences and the videos I made were very focused on like behaviors that could weaken or destroy organizing, but also videos for new people
Mhm.
who are like, I want to get involved, but I don't know how. Or like, I want to find a group to organize with, but I don't know how. Or like, I want to find a friend to organize with, but I don't know how. I don't know how to talk to my neighbors. So I just made a ton of videos on that.
Mhm.
And sorry, what was the initial question again?
Well, I think this is something that you really hit on here because I always think that for community organizing, and I say this from a lens of having some adjacency to that world in Chicago with so many of my friends who have been involved with organizing advocacy level. And I feel that there is this pressure of trying to be perfect. Like I have to do the right things. If I don't, I'm going to, face repercussions from my community. I wonder if you can kind of like share more about that part because I think that like as Asian folks, like, we've been so trained to try to be perfect, to try to overachieve, try to, you know, I guess in some ways gain validation in a way, but how do we give ourselves that grace? I think it can be very difficult when we put so much, or when organizers or activists can put so much on their plate and not give themselves a break because if they feel like they're letting go of the paddle then they feel responsible for it. So I'm curious about what you've observed from that lens.
Yeah, mm, I guess I could speak from my own experience. I'm not
Hmm.
sure if this is something I would rate. I don't know enough Asian organizers who are actually type A to to make a more general statement about this. I can
Hmm.
say that, you know, I would consider myself a very type A person who can be very perfectionist, right? And I think through organizing, one thing that I've learned is just to really rotate the tasks and like delegate them out more and sort of strengthen numbers, whatever you want to call it. But that did take some time. Like I remember when I was on as part of like the Chinatown organizing part of this picket line, and I would always get very annoyed when people weren't actually standing in like a line and they were just kind of standing in a circle. And if you ask me right now, I would still actually go the line because I think it's just visually very clear to people walking past it. But I think, now I'm like, okay, if it's not in that particular shape, it's okay as long as there's still a lot of people, which
Hmm.
I did not have that mentality a while ago.
Hmm.
So I'm not actually sure if it's like a racialized thing or just like everyone goes on their own journey of going from I need this to be perfect to instead a mentality of done is better than perfect. I think
Hmm.
organizing tends to lean a lot towards done is better than perfect
Right.
when we're talking about people who are volunteering their time, who are not paid organizers. They might
Hmm.
have two jobs, they might have other things going on. So yeah, I can't really speak as much to the Asian element as opposed to just
Hmm.
in general. It can be
Yeah.
very hard for, I think it's a learning process for anyone who's like type A or perfectionist to start doing things. Done is better than perfect, and just having like a very long-term mentality about like
Hmm.
what actions are actually detrimental versus some things that are just, it's not that big of a deal and you're making it a big deal.
Yeah. I think this is something I always think about because self-care, collective care, and also understanding capacity, burnout issues is something that really doesn't get talked about enough because we're constantly in rapid response mode. And how do we, I guess, continue to create ways in which we look after one another? And how have you personally been able to um, recognize burnout in your work and also with other fellow organizers and community members?
Yeah. I think one easy way to recognize burnout is when when members get angry at each other.
Hmm.
I think that's like the smallest sign that I lean towards. Like people can be angry for a variety of
Hmm.
reasons, like different perspectives on something, but when it comes to burnout, it's always like you hear things like, I've been doing so much and this person isn't doing anything. They haven't shown up for the past 2 or 3 weeks. You just hear all these comparisons, and that really is a sign of burnout. Yeah, so that's like one way to hear about it. I mean, again, in terms of actually dealing with it, I always just lean on rotation. It's like you need to be able to rotate the task that you're doing. If you don't have enough people to rotate with, you either need to train more people or find more people and then train them. But that I think that's like the one of the only solutions to deal with this. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing it by yourself each week.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that it's very I think it's very important to like recognize the rotation, like, and also recognize the power of transparency. And it's like, hey, I need to express my needs right now. Like I'm struggling at the moment. How can I step back? How can this person help to support me, or how can my community help to support me? And when I do come back, how can I also do the same for other folks? I think that it's because the way our capitalism runs is it's meant to destroy our communities. And I say this, I know it sounds like I'm being very binary as I'm saying this, or being very simple as I say this, but that like capitalism is a way of trying to overwork us to kill our spirits. And with organizing, it's hard to like fight against the capitalistic machines that are seeking to destroy. And that can be very challenging and very taxing. And yeah, I've seen many organizers burn out or have mental scars from this work. And so I'm very curious about like maybe small wins that you have experienced with the community. And I was wondering if you could share some of the things that you have been proud of during those moments.
Totally, yeah. And I guess a quick note about the burnout is, self-care looks different for everyone. But again, it's like if you find yourself always comparing how much you're doing to other people, that's the
Mhm.
first sign to start doing rotation.
Mhm.
Maybe get yourself a nice treat and really, press a little bit on the brakes versus trying to just go full steam ahead. But to answer your question now about like small wins, I mean, I talked about this a little bit earlier about getting to know your neighbors. Like I think in all the other buildings I've lived in New York City, I maybe knew one or two people versus now it's like there's probably like 15 neighbors I could DM message. We like say hi, we dap each
Mhm.
other up. It feels so rewarding to have
Mhm.
that on a daily basis. The building I live in is also very tenant organized, so lots of skill sharing, lots of free item giveaways, lots of texting each other as soon as the elevator stops working or like a breaker stops working. I think it's a level of relationship that I've not had since being here, so I feel very rewarded by that on a daily basis. In terms of larger organizing, I'm still trying to figure my way out through a lot of Crown Heights things. Like I always tell myself that, we measure our plans in centuries, right? To think of the long term. So I can see myself in like another 2 or 3 months having a much stronger role with like some of the things that I want to do. But for the past few months, I think the biggest wins have just been building relationships again with people in the groups. I think it always comes back to the relationship, no matter where you are, just like making friends, hanging out, understanding like the political goal, but just really, really building like a solid relationship and not just like a co-worker relationship where we just show up to work and then go home.
Mhm. What resistance have you faced in your organizing work, and how and what has the response been when you're dealing with blowback?
Um, guess it depends on what kind of blowback we're talking about, but Let me ask you this first. What
Mhm.
examples did you have in mind?
Well, like maybe from developers or with um, elected officials or with community groups that do not align with your group's values and mission.
Hmm. Yeah, so I'd probably divide this to like external blowback and internal blowback, right? Like
Hmm.
internal blowback's always within a group. Um, I kind of leave internal blowback out of discussions because I feel like that's just stuff for a internal group to work on, and I don't
Hmm.
believe in gossip that much. So,
Hmm.
I mean, internal blowback, I feel like for anything, like for me, what it looked like is, when on the picket line, we're telling people to not support these institutions that support a lot of these really rich Chinatown developers, and people are just like, I don't care, I'm gonna go in anyways. That's like one very easy way of just like they're like, I don't care what you said, I'm still going, and it does suck, right? But
Hmm.
in those moments, it's more like keeping track of the wins of people who actually supported the picket line versus didn't. The Chinatown days, it's just being framed as, paid protesters, what I feel like more people might hear now, but it's like we're paid protesters, we're charlatans, we're just trying to get money for ourselves. There will be a period potentially, depending on what you're doing, of like people really trying to frame you with the worst intentions to get um to get you to lose support, right?
Hmm.
But those are some examples of like external blowback that I've seen before.
Hmm. Something that also stood out for me, and I was just thinking about this, is one of the struggles that, in the Asian American communities or in other marginalized communities is language barriers. And as someone like myself that's Vietnamese and Cambodian, I really don't have a grasp on both languages. And I think this is very true for a lot of us that live in the diaspora or that live as second generation folks that don't have the language ability to talk with their parents, to talk with their grandparents, to talk with older community members. What do you know, or what have you seen in, helping folks to navigate language difficulties or language barriers with community members that don't have the the English proficiency?
Yeah, I think that's still a pretty big challenge today. I mean, I don't have any actually good solutions for this. I just can speak from what I see. Many organizing groups in like the Brooklyn neighborhood are always like, we need this flyer to be translated to Chinese, Arabic, and Spanish, and then sometimes like Haitian Creole. And I'm not sure how many volunteers there are for that translation
Hmm.
or what the solution is in terms of how we can easily find those people on a consistent basis. Um, I mean, I grew up going to Chinese school, and so the Mandarin was covered for me. One thing I did do when I was organizing more in Chinatown was take Cantonese classes.
Mm.
So that was my own attempt to bridge the language barrier that I had because a lot of Chinese workers speak Cantonese in Chinatown. So that was my only fix for it. And like if I had unlimited time, it's like, yeah, I guess I could learn my second language I always wanted to learn was Arabic, but it's like I don't
Mm.
have the time to do that and it might be another 3 or 4 years before I actually have the proficiency to be able to translate a flyer or speak to someone very well in a conversation. But if anyone has solutions, I'm actually very curious. I just know that's a very strong need for like consistent translation, not like a one-off person. Like if there's some community agency or org that does that, that would be really cool.
Yeah, you know what? I was just thinking about the AirPods that has a language translation. Now, I'm not there to endorse Apple, so let's be very clear here. But yeah, I kind of wonder about these weird technologies with translation, if it's even useful. So I'm very leery of it, and I'm like, okay, I think that is a challenge because I know in the Vietnamese community there's a lot of Vietnamese propaganda radio that a lot of our elders listen to, and especially in Orange County, where it's a lot, it's still a strong Republican bastion there, and for us millennial Gen Z folks, it's a struggle to have those conversations because, like, we have seen Asian folks, including my community members, were part of January 6th, and that was very galling. That was very jarring, and like do you have conversations with your family on the work that you do? And what has their response been like?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I would say like broadly speaking, I feel like all members of my family voted for Trump, even in
Mhm.
2024. Uh, but how I put it, organizing in general is um, I would frame it as a difference first between organizing and activism, right? Where
Mhm.
organizing, we're actually trying to build relationships to change people's minds. Activism is like, just like talking at people about this issue and then this issue and then this issue. So I would say within my own experiences, it's like, yeah, I think I've had the most success talking to my family first about not even politics, but just building the relationship. Like I used to have many more arguments with my family about politics. We had like 10 paragraph long email threads,
Wow.
periods of no communication. So I've kind of seen that and what it looks like. But I think just first after having an actual relationship built on some commonality of like, oh, we're going to visit our family together, I think that opens the doors more for actual political conversation when it comes
Mhm.
up. So that's my only take on this right now is because I'm
Yeah.
still trying to figure this out myself, but it's like
Hmm.
build the relationship first over other things and slowly talk about the politics instead of trying to pick the path of like most resistance, which is like going in like guns blazing with like
Hmm.
here are the 20 reasons why Trump is bad, Epstein list, you name it.
Yeah. Yeah. What made Trump appealing to your family? I think this is a question that I ask a lot of my Asian colleagues on this.
Oh yeah, I'd say like top two. One is like one is that I think they think he's very anti-CCP. Like
Mm.
he's very like anti-communist. That's a whole thing.
Mhm.
And I think the other one might be the economy. Just thinking about my own parents, it's one of those two: anti-communist and pro-economy.
Mm. That is like an interesting commonality that I see. I see this within our communities because the word communism is like a red flag for um, the South Vietnamese elders. And I feel like there's something about the Republican Party that's so good at weaponizing their trauma and like, and beating that and beating that on a drum. I think that that's something that's like, how do we counter that? And I had this interview with Michelle Kim the other day about this, and she said, like, I had to switch from going from the moral policing to like, let me learn about your story. Like, why are you scared? How do I try to meet halfway? Even though it has like the both sidisms to it, but like how do I try to find a way to connect to something that really hits them hard? Like what brings out that passion and where is that coming from? I think that's certainly something I think about, like how do we navigate these very difficult conversations? And I mean, I know that you don't have the solution to it yet. Like we all are still in a way searching for that. What does it look like? Some can be pulled out of it, but others, are unfortunately entrenched in very harmful beliefs and practices. So, yeah, I know I'm kind of like rambling on this part, but this is something that has always probably kept me up on many nights.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with many of the things you said. My own take on this is that well, I mean, my own take is time will tell.
Mm,
And with regards to communism specifically, we're hearing that a lot in New York City, right? Donald Trump is attacking Zohran Mamdani all day now
mm,
for being a communist, right? Socialist doesn't have the same ring to it anymore, and now he's going communist, right? He's fully trying to lean into the Red Scare. But a lot of people really like Zohran. My sister, who definitely voted for Trump, also really likes Zohran as like a charismatic figure. Whether his, policies around like, the universal pre-K, like the one free grocery store in each borough, the
mm,
free buses,
mm,
whether that actually, if it works, I think that's a huge plus for quote unquote communism or socialism or anything in that direction, right? But uh, to me, like I kind of dropped that point of discussion for right now because we kind of know where it leads. Like we pull the historical references of like Mao or like Vietnam or whatever, right? And then we go into a historical thing of like it happened in the past, it might happen now. I don't think any of that matters at this point. It's like time
yeah.
will tell. what the current implementation of communism or socialism looks like, and that'll probably start with the election of Zoran.
Yeah, right now we are dealing with ice raids that are happening. Being in Chicago, that is already starting to become a hot center, along with Portland and LA. And I think this is something to really pay very close attention to because people are getting snatched off the streets, including U.S. citizens, and and it's becoming, let's just be called for what it is. I mean, the Trump administration has gone very rogue, and so have ICE agents, and it's been terrorizing a lot of communities. I'm curious to see what you have noticed from Crown Heights and how have the community been organizing to to resist against the ICE raids that are happening.
Yeah, I will say I have limited knowledge of this. I know many groups who have done, know your rights workshops. My own take on this right now is I'm not sure how effective those are because I don't think any ICE agent is actually respecting anyone's rights. It's like, do you have a warrant? And they're like, that's a fantasy now, and then they like break open your door with one of those like battering
Hmm.
ram things.
Hmm.
So I see a lot of know your rights workshops. I see a lot of people proposing ideas of, rapid response networks, but I don't know how much actual capacity there is for that. Um, I'm that's what I see right now. Most of what's happening in New York is always happening at 26 Federal Plaza, like the courthouse. You just have like 15 ICE agents lined up outside the courthouse where like someone's scheduled to have their like appointment for that day for like legal paperwork or something. And then after they come out of the courthouse, they just arrest them. So I'm like, that seems like the predominant form of arrest happening in New York City.
Hmm.
But yeah, again within Crown Heights, there's I don't if there is one, then I'm not plugged into it for like a solid rapid response neighborhood level thing. There's a lot of proposals for it, but I don't think there's anything like super solid right now.
Hmm. As far as the work that you're currently doing, what are you looking to spend more time on? And also, in terms of the relationship that you have with your neighbors, your community members, what ideas are you currently working on, and what practices are you hoping to put together?
Totally. Yeah, a lot of it's with like two different um Crown Heights groups. One's focused at a tenant level, and then the other one's focused at like a block level. So, New York City, we have like block parties occasionally and like so like block associations in general. So I really want to spend like the next few years continuing to hopefully live in this same building. And then also having more relationships at a block level because I think that's like the level that I've never heard of really built out before. But I think it could be really powerful whether we talk about like elections or a larger neighborhood activity or political, whatever you call it, to first just build those relationships beyond a building onto multiple buildings in a row, onto like multiple blocks in a row.
Mhm. What are the things that make you proud to be a New York City resident, especially Crown Heights? What makes it very special to you as a resident?
Yeah, I think Crown Heights has one of the strongest community organizing scenes. Like when I think about groups in the neighborhood, I can think about like four or five versus other areas where I'm like, I think there's one group here. So I think in terms of the amount of organizing here, that's very cool. In terms of, I think that's I think that's the only thing I'd really say in terms of like organizing with New York City. In general, it's like, oh, New York City has a really, high density, a lot of people here. That's always nice for finding new people to get involved with groups. And for better or for worse, we have the eyes of the Trump administration all the time. Like I guess kind of similar to California, but it seems like even my family in Arkansas, my sister who was in like Tennessee, everyone is paying attention to New York City news and its policies and its politics. So it feels kind of cool to have the spotlight, but also is yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
What steps can people take to be involved? And what opportunities are there if you're not able to, like, for example, use your body as a defense against police and ICE? Like, what other ways of supporting community organizing work? What can it look like for someone that's brand new to this?
Yeah, I think that really how people can get involved really depends on what they care about and what options are available. So, something I see a lot in New York City is a lot of, jail support, mutual aid, and food distribution, right? Those don't require you to be chanting at anything, but like it's a very routine way of like, okay, we have a lot of people getting released every day. We're here to provide them support in this form. Uh, Broadly speaking, for your question, I would just say, think about what you care about, find what groups there are, and then have them sort of break down what are like the smaller actions you can do, and then what are the larger ones, and go from there.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you this question, like, what led you and Jerry to Sunset Politically Asian? What did you learn from that podcast experience? And are you still in contact with Jerry? Because I have not ever been in conversation with Jerry, which Jerry, hey, if you're listening. So I'm very curious about that because it was one of my favorite shows. I felt like at that time there were not many progressive leaning Asian American podcasts at that time, and there weren't very many to begin with. And I felt like your content really raised a lot of visibility and awareness of what is going on in New York City, but also in the current landscape. So yeah, I was very curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say like there's a lot of political TikTokers now, a lot of even a lot of like Asian political TikTokers in a podcast form. Sure, maybe there's not that many, but I
Mhm,
don't know if it's as needed. I mean, for us, it was just mainly the time thing. Like it was like pretty hard to record and then edit and just pump out weekly episodes. And I think we had been doing it for 2 years with like maybe like moderate traction, but not like high velocity.
mhm.
So yeah, that was about it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's funny because like I just know a lot of podcasts who are coming and going even right now, but I
Mhm.
feel like it's just eventually people stop.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when I left 2 years ago, I thought I was really done. I was completely over it by that point. I'm like, I accomplished everything I needed to do in those 4 years, which 4 years in podcasting where it was like 40 years in dog years, basically. And I felt the need to come back, I think, after staying away for a while and having to deal with, a lot of personal issues. And once I gave myself the time to actually live life. I think this is something that we all have to remember is to live our lives, have a little bit of joy in our lives because that actually starts to ignite the creativity, the motivation, the passion, and that's what's needed in community organizing work. And that's something that I feel is very essential to this, not just self care, but also collective care. How do we take care of each other? And I think coming back to this landscape, it's like I don't really know any podcasters to be honest with you. It's a whole different landscape now. And I think about like the Joe Rogans, the Andrew Tates of the world, the late Charlie Kirk, who made their podcast platforms like the dominant force for younger Gen Z folks. I know that you do a lot of work on TikTok. I mean, I think TikTok, right? And I know for Instagram for sure, like educating folks about community organizing. What do you hope to do with your platform, or what are you looking to educate um, uh, followers and people in the social media sphere?
Yeah, so when I make the videos that I make, I always just keep people in mind that I know. Like these are people who may be organizing within like a community organizing group already, or some are like friends who I would say are like leftist politics minded, but they don't really do that much in real life. So my goal is to always make videos for them. And on a much broader picture, I guess the thesis in my head is just there are so many people who are so smart and they have potential and are so talented who are also sort of like on the scale of left to right, like definitely more left in terms of politics, who just don't really do that much right now. And it's kind
Hmm.
of like understanding what are the barriers and like what are the real life things that are preventing them from taking the first steps and making video content that sort of gets rid of those first steps, makes them unnecessary, try to make the path easier.
Mm. Yeah, because I think these days um, it's important for other content creators, especially of marginalized communities, to share their stories, to create platforms, because we're seeing so many right-wing fringe voices like dominate the airwaves, but also in the social media landscape. And I've always feel like it's so important to find ways to support and bring stories of what community members are experiencing, but also what folks are actually doing the work. Because I've, for me, I've always been a believer that when we show the work that's being done, it creates hope, it creates opportunities, and I think what you're doing is very essential. And I'm a big fan of the work that you've been doing because it helps to educate and informs folks who are not knowledgeable about what community organizing looks like. What does it take to build community? What does it take to stand up for your rights or for other people's rights? And what does it mean to, you know, to continue this work in a safe manner? So I really appreciate what you've been, sharing. And I was wondering where people can find you and where people can, follow your next move.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So my Instagram is Aaron Flarin underscore. So that's AARONFLARIN underscore, just because someone took the original. And yeah, from there you can find all the other accounts. There's like YouTube, there's TikTok. People will know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if there's any lasting comments or any lasting points that you would like to share too. It could be in any capacity with the work that you're doing or just in general. Or what advice would you even have for folks in, right now in this current landscape?
Totally. Um, it's always hard for me to give general advice because in my head, what pops up is like all these different people that I meet and talk to, and it's like, oh, there's such a wide scale.
Hmm.
Maybe maybe I'll just leave with something about, you know, oh, I know. I'll leave with this whole saying I've been putting a lot on Instagram, which is to do more politics together over time. So it's like first we want people to do more, right? But we also I really want them to do things together. I always say like if you're trying to find one thing that will make everything else easier, it's finding a friend to do things with together. So I
Hmm.
always just say do more politics together, and then
Hmm.
over time it's not going to be fixed in like a week or a month or even 3 months or 5 months or 6 months. It might take a year. So just really have that long term mentality, just